So this is my car clock. I have an older car. You know how the time changes twice a year? Well, yeah, I drive around for a couple weeks, and I think I'm either too early or too late. And eventually I do figure out how to change the clock, and I push 3 buttons and turn 2 dials. But I really don't know how to do this. And so why is it that the learning I do twice every year doesn't stick? And that is what I have been thinking about for about the last 5 years. How do we teach in schools to get sticky learning? So this is Vinny. She teaches grade 2. About 5 years ago, January, she plops down in my office, and she's in a quandary. She's writing report cards. And she's going to comment on her students' ability to tell time to the quarter hour. Grade 2 expectation, she's taught the 2-week unit. Problem is, although most of her students can tell time to the half hour, quarter hour, not so much. So, should they all get a C, she asks. Well, I said, my very best principal voice, I don't know. And then I asked her if she thought, could they learn to tell time to the quarter hour if they kept practicing till the end of the year? Oh yeah, no problem, she said. Well, you know that proverbial light bulb? We kind of looked at each other and said, why not? Why couldn't her 7-year-olds continue to practice telling time till the end of the year? After all, they are end-of-year expectations. That's key. So I started thinking about other areas of the curriculum where maybe we weren't getting sticky learning. And I thought about fractions. How many of you are teachers in the audience? And how many of you get to teach the unit on fractions probably in the spring, because that's how long-range plans and textbooks are organized? And how many of you secretly wonder if maybe last year's teacher forgot to teach the unit on fractions? Yeah, because you go to start, the kids know nothing. Happened to me too. Every year I taught it, no matter what grade. But I bet, like me, your students do fine on the unit test at the end of April. So again, why doesn't the learning stick? So every year there's all this stuff that we have to teach, fondly known as the curriculum. And as teachers, we traditionally divide it up into 2, 4, 6-week units. We teach the unit, we test the kids real quick, we check it off as done, and we move on to the next one. And we like it this way. It is organized, it is efficient. As teachers, we really like that done check mark in our books. And it has been done like this for centuries. So we think this must be how students learn. But maybe there's a better way. So I'm thinking about Vinny and her 7-year-olds learning to tell time, and I'm thinking about all of my experiences over the years trying to teach fractions. I'm still thinking about my car clock. And I started thinking about a newer experience that I've had in learning. And how did I learn this new skill? Well, I throw pots on a wheel, not at walls, mostly. And it's been a very humbling experience. You know the movie Ghost, Demi Moore? It's not that easy. And the thing about throwing pots is that you have all of these skills that you have to use for every pot, every time. And my very, very patient instructor, Jason, has taught me how to make the pot every single time for every pot. Now, I'm a little bit better nowadays, and every once in a while, he will give me an instruction that actually works. And I'm thrilled, like, gonna quit my day job, become a potter, buy Birkenstocks. And then I usually say something a little snarky, like, so why didn't you ever tell me this before? But of course he has. He's told me many, many times before. It's just taken me a really long time to integrate all of the knowledge so that I can throw pots. And I'm beginning to think that maybe there are some things about learning that might be true. Once-a-year units, like fractions, don't make for sticky learning. Some concepts, like telling time for 7-year-olds, might just be too complicated for a 2-week unit. And some things, like learning to throw pots, just need lots of time and repetition. So I always say to my teachers, try something new, no one will die. It's my PD model. So, in fact, I say it so often that some of them made me a sign. It hangs in my office. We might get t-shirts. And I was thinking, if teaching in discrete linear units didn't make for sticky learning, then maybe we needed to try something new. And what would happen if we spiraled the curriculum, returning to key concepts like fractions or multiplication or division or time many times over the course of the year, and not just in one yearly unit? After all, they are end-of-year expectations. There is nothing in the curriculum documents that says any student needs to master anything in November or January or even April. It is not there. I did go and look. So I'm working at the time with this really courageous and adventurous group of teachers, and they're thoroughly indoctrinated into try something new, no one will die. And so we decide to stop teaching like this, where each of those comforting check marks represents one done unit, and start teaching like this. Now, I can see that those of you who are teachers are feeling a little uncomfortable, maybe squirming in your seats a bit, because gone are the comforting done check marks. But we jump into it anyways. And we try spiraling the curriculum, but fearless leader that I am, I do go looking for some research somewhere that might support this rather radical break from tradition. And I found 2 really interesting pieces of research that supports the concept of returning to key ideas many times throughout the year. So, research finding number 1, massed versus spaced learning. It turns out that our intuition really influences how we decide to teach, based mostly on how we intuitively think people learn, except our intuition might be wrong. So let's look at an example. Let's suppose that you decide to learn the names of all the birds that come to your bird feeder. I don't know, like maybe your grandmother is coming to visit. I don't know why grandmothers know all the names of the birds. You notice that? But they do. I am not ready to be a grandmother. I do not know them. Nevertheless, you have set yourself this task, and your intuition is going to tell you to make a list and practice the names of the birds every single day the week before Grandma comes to visit. This is called mass practice. We teach like this all the time. And when Grandma comes to visit, you are going to wow her with your bird acumen, and you will think you have nailed it. Except you will be wrong. Because the next time Grandma comes to visit, you're going to be hard-pressed to remember the names of any of the birds except maybe the cardinal and the chickadee, and let's face it, you already know them. It doesn't count. And the research tells us that when we learn in a mass practice, our retention is very weak. So what would have worked? If you had spaced your learning. If you had learned the names of the birds, waited a while, practiced them some more, waited a week, practiced them some more, and waited, you still would have wowed Grandma when she came to visit, but you would also impress her on her next visit. Your retention of the concepts is much greater. And in fact, this positive effect of spaced over massed practice has been in the literature since, wait for it, 1885. I know, 1885. But in education, we persist in teaching in a massed practice. Teach the unit, test them quick, move on to the next one. Because when we test students immediately following the learning, they do quite well. Think about grammar or visit. Think about your unit's fractions test. And so we are lulled into thinking that everyone learns the stuff, except it doesn't stick. And we've known this since 1885. Intuition plus tradition convince us, however, that mass practice must be the way to go. Research finding number 2, interleaving. Let's go back to the birds. Let's suppose that you have one of those grandmothers who is not going to be satisfied with just the names. No, she wants interesting information like migration patterns or identifying features. So again, your intuition will tell you to learn all about the nuthatches for a week, and then all about the cardinals for a week, and then all about the chickadees for a week, and then all about the finches for a week. And this is called blocked practice. We teach like this all the time. Except when Grandma comes to visit, you're not going to remember very much about the differences between the birds, and she is not going to be impressed. However, had you interleaved your learning and learned about the cardinal and the nuthatch and the finch and the chickadee all at once over multiple learning opportunities, Grandma would be impressed. It turns out that our brains really like learning in interleaved ways because it helps us to figure out how to compare and contrast and see similarities and differences. But our students fall victim to blocked practice all the time. A few years ago, I was doing a math lesson study with a group of teachers, and we spent the part of the morning coming up with this really great lesson for a grade 3 class. They're about to learn about the subtraction of multi-digit numbers. And as we're walking into the classroom, I casually say to the classroom teacher, "So what do you think your kid's greatest challenge is going to be?" And she said, "Oh, they're going to add the 2 numbers." So I thought that was a little odd, but I didn't say anything. But she was right. Most of the students in her class added the 2 numbers in the problem. They had just finished a unit on the addition of multi-digit numbers. They were victims of blocked practice. But when we spiral the curriculum, we automatically space the learning and interleave previously taught concepts with new learning. Traditionally, in mathematics classrooms, students learn to apply one strategy to a specific context. You know this is true if you think back to your math textbook. If the chapter was about multiplication, you were pretty sure the questions in the chapter were about multiplication. In fact, you were pretty sure the unit test was about multiplication. So except for having to know how to multiply, you didn't have to do a lot of deep thinking at all. Now imagine a classroom where the problems that students face change regularly, and they are forced then to choose which strategy to apply to which context. Imagine a classroom where similar concepts, like, say, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, are taught in an interleaved practice, not a linear practice, so that students learn to figure out the similarities and differences between the concepts. That's what happens when you spiral the curriculum. So there's this researcher, his name's Doug Rohrer, and he's been looking at all of this stuff for quite a few years. And he found in 2014 a willing group of grade 7 math classes, and he divided them into 2 cohorts. One group learned through blocked practice, and the other through interleaved practice. And then he waited for 2 weeks after all the learning was done, and then he gave every student's favorite a surprise test. and the results were astounding. The blocked group had a mean score after 2 weeks of 38%. The interleaved group, mean score, 72%. That's significant. It is no wonder that my poor students didn't remember very much about fractions when they only got 1 4-week block of learning per year. So I've been mucking about with spiraling the curriculum for about 5 years now and in 2 different schools. Mucking about is a deliberately chosen word here. It's not a lack of vocabulary on my part. It has been really messy and hard, and my very courageous and adventurous teachers have had to rethink everything they thought they knew about teaching and learning. But we get sticky learning. When we come back to concepts throughout the year, the students say, hey, I remember this. And they continue to learn and persevere. We don't start at square one each time. And concepts which had previously been difficult for our students to learn are being mastered by the end of the year. For example, in grades 7 and 8, we teach fractions, decimals, and percents all at the same time in an interleaved practice, spacing the learning 4 to 5 times per year. No one in my school, teachers or students, panic anymore in November or January or even April when students don't get it, because we know we have the rest of the year to come back to it. This is Robin. She teaches grade 7 math. So I said to her, so why do you stick with spiraling the curriculum? Because it is way harder to teach this way. And she said, because I've never seen my students learn so much or be so engaged. Now, Robin looks young, but she's actually been teaching math for 15 years. And then she went on to tell me about a conversation she had with one of her students who said, I really get it when you teach, and you know that I don't ever get it the first time, but we always come back to it, and then I do. And Robin said, that's why I do it. Teachers change their practice when their students are successful. So spiraling the curriculum has got us sticky learning for sure. But then it had all of these added bonuses that we hadn't even anticipated. We no longer teach in a blocked practice, but in very fast-paced mini units in all subjects, not just math. So our students are far more engaged and enthusiastic. They are more flexible in their thinking and better problem solvers. Because there's a new challenge every day, they've become very confident in their abilities to solve problems. In education, we have to stop relying on tradition and intuition, particularly when our observations of student learning and research tell us otherwise. Spiraling the curriculum is just a change in our thinking, but it has made a huge difference for the students in our school. None of my teachers would go back to teaching traditionally because we do get sticky learning and we have very engaged students. So far, no one has died. And Vinny's students did learn to tell time to the quarter hour by the end of June. Thank you.